Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a preview of this week's Insider Spectacular. If you're a Classics Today insider, you'll be able to see the video offering the best of Leopold Stokowski. The Leopold Stokowski. And if you're not an insider but want to be, please consider signing up. There's a link in the description of this very video, and it's also, of course, on the ClassicsToday.com homepage. So with that said, what is this little preview about? Well, we're going to talk about the most perverse Stokowski performance out there, or one of them, because the Insider video is the best of. This is not the worst of. This is the most demented of. And the piece in question is Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony, which Tchaikovsky recorded a couple of times. And there was a basic similarity to his approach, but that approach was always completely twisted and so much fun. Oh, God, because when Stokowski was demented, there was nothing in the world more fun, especially if you know what something was supposed to sound like. But first, let's consider the composer. Why Tchaikovsky? Well, Tchaikovsky has a reputation as an amazing tunesmith, but somebody who was formally a little bit dysfunctional, and so it was okay to help him make his points in larger, more serious compositions, to which he was not, theoretically, temperamentally suited. Now, I think that this is complete nonsense, but there was an entire tradition of performance in Russia, mind you, which began messing about with his scores. I mean, for example, there's a cut in the finale of the Fourth Symphony. It originated during Tchaikovsky's own lifetime, and even his brother, suggested that he do it, suggested that that cut be made. I mean, nowadays we don't, but you can still hear recordings of the Fifth with the middle sort of development section sliced out. There's the Manfred Symphony. Even Toscanini, that stickler for fidelity to the score, reorchestrated bits of it, added tam-tam crashes at the end of the first movement. And the big thing to do, because Manfred requires an organ or harmonium, and because it ends quietly, was to take the coda of the first movement and simply repeat it at the end of the finale to give you a loud ending with whatever other doodads you wanted to add to make it even louder. And Svetlanov did that. Lots of people did that. It seemed to be very difficult to play Tchaikovsky as written. Percussion parts get messed with constantly. Bernstein added cymbal crashes to Romeo and Juliet and to the finale of the Fourth Symphony. People find it impossible to resist, but Stokowsky took it to an entirely new level of manic insanity. His view of Tchaikovsky as sort of the ultimate in sensual, melodic voluptuousness, able to be manipulated like putty, was like no one else's. And of course, as is always the case with Leopold Stokowski's stuff, everything he did with 110% conviction. In his best performances, that is. I mean, there were some things he messed with which turned out to be quite unsuccessful. The Russian Easter Overture by Rimsky-Korsakov is a case in point, where he cuts the end of it, and it's a very lame performance. But that was rare with him. Stokowski was, above all things, someone who had the courage of his convictions, and boy, did he ever. I mean, the size of his ego must have exceeded the visible boundaries of our expanding universe. He was amazing that way. And remember, he did an interview on 60 Minutes and with Mike Wallace. And, Stokowski said, I always give 100% to everything I do. And he said to Mike Wallace, do you always give 100%? Mike Wallace says, maybe 80% or something like that. And Stokowski gets up and walks away and says, I don't have time for anybody who doesn't give 100% in everything that they do. But he did. He truly did. And no matter how warped his interpretation, no matter how he cut and trimmed and reorchestrated and futzed around with tempos, he somehow made it sound convincing. Now, he recorded Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony commercially on Vanguard with the American Symphony Orchestra. That's a performance that is rather similar in its outward form to this one. That is a live recording from 1965 with the New Japan Philharmonic or the Japan Philharmonic, pardon me, the Japan Philharmonic. And it's on YouTube. The whole performance is on YouTube, and it's in very good sound. So you can find it, and just Stokowski, Tchaikovsky 4. It will pop up on YouTube, and you can hear it. The Vanguard recording is sonically superior to this one. The performance is not quite as nuts. There's always a certain, thrill to a live performance that, sometimes the studio version doesn't quite match. I think even Stokowski may have felt that he needed to sort of tone down some of the strangely abrupt tempo changes in the coda of the finale, just to make sure we all get to the end in one piece. He did not care in 1965. And so I want to play you that absolutely perverse finale of Tchaikovsky's Fourth. However, before we get there, I want you to hear what it sounds normally, because if you don't have something to compare it to, you're not going to truly savor the ultimate dementedness that Stokowski brought to the proceedings. So I have here Exhibit A, normal performance by Maurice Abravanel and the Utah Symphony. Now, this is on Vox, and I use it because I have permission to use it, but also because it's an extremely exciting and marvelous performance in its own right. And the finale is so irresistible at the end. Even Abravanel adds a cymbal crash on the last chord. The last chord of Tchaikovsky's Fourth is supposed to be, chunk, 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 jump. Well, that last chord only has a triangle tap on it. There is no cymbal, there is no bass drum. But lots of people like to add one anyway. And so what the hell, so Abravanel adds it. But in all other respects, it's a very good, very exciting, but within the parameters of normalcy and respect for the score kind of interpretation. So let's listen to the coda with Abravanel and the Utah Symphony, and then we'll get to hear Stokowski have his way with it. Here we go. All right, I'm sure you heard. Very good. Very, very, very good. Exciting, fresh, zippy, does everything it's supposed to do. But now, my friends, we're going to listen to to Stokowski, how he gets an orchestra to follow him through this whole thing. Even the last chord. There are tempo manipulations within the rests. He does it in the last two chords, which are completely out of time. He adds a tam-tam crescendo to the last final unison. He does things that you cannot imagine, that Tchaikovsky never would have dreamed of. And my, how amazing it is. Completely, absolutely insane. Here it is, Tchaikovsky with the Japan Philharmonic, live from 1965. nothing like it in all of music, and nobody who could get away with it the way Stokowski could. And he gets away with it, again, because he does it with total, complete, utter conviction, total abandon, totally unashamed. The man had no shame. And that's what makes it so much fun. Now, in the video on the best of Stokowski, this is not included. It's not included because it is so over the top. I mean, even before you get to, the end of the finale, all kinds of other things are happening in the first movement too. So I can't include this among his best performances because the best ones somehow manage to balance the perversity with what the composer actually might have wanted, and they do it in a way that just works. It doesn't draw attention to itself the way this does. But by the same token, this stuff you can't wag a sanctimonious finger at the guy. You just can't, because he was too sure of himself in what he was doing, and because the ultimate result is thrilling and exciting and marvelous, and you come away going, "Phew, that was great. I'd buy a ticket to see it again any day." And that's what it's all about, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's really, really what the point is. It's about wanting to listen to it again and being completely and thoroughly entertained and satisfied emotionally and intellectually and in every possible way. And Stokowski delivered the goods as few conductors ever had. And he was honest about doing just that, which I think is marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. So I do hope that you will tune in for the best of Stokowski over at ClassicsToday.com as an insider subscriber. But in the meantime, I wanted you to hear some of this because it's just too good not to mention, number one, and because I want you to have a taste of all the fun we're having over there in the subscriber area, the insider subscriber area. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for considering subscribing to ClassicsToday.com. Keep on listening and just have a great time with your Stokowski recordings. Take care.